Hello and welcome to Water Within Astrology. Before I get into this video about the Cancer full moon and the switching of the moon's nodes, I want to point out that I thought long and hard about coming out here to the freezing cold, and I thought about the themes of the Capricorn and Cancer axis that this full moon will be resting upon. And I decided to take myself out of my warm comfort zone and take myself out into the cold. And I think that is what we are being called to do with this full moon. So welcome. This is the full moon in Cancer, happening at 23 degrees of Cancer, where the moon will be, and then 23 degrees where the sun will be in Capricorn. They are exactly opposing each other, and that is what brings all the light to the full moon that we see in the night sky. So let's start with what is happening before the full moon on January 11th. We are going to be seeing the nodes of the moon, basically the North Pole and the South Pole of the moon, switching its polarity. It is finally at 0 degrees of Aries and Libra, and we will be seeing it moving into 29 degrees of Pisces and Virgo on the 11th. And the 11th itself is a portal known as the 111 portal, January 11th. And 111, of course, adds up to 3. It is inherently very creative because the number 3 represents creation. If you put two people together, you might get a third person being born. And Cancer is all about birthing. It is the mother archetype. It's also the child, the newborn child, the infant. And so all of these themes are actually really tied together, especially since the North Node is shifting into Pisces, which is also a water sign, just like Cancer. Cancer is a cardinal water sign. It is represented in the zodiac as the crab. And what a cardinal sign does is it initiates something. It is the beginning of a season in the zodiacal wheel. And so what better way to start the new year is with a cardinal full moon. Normally a new moon is signifying beginnings, but we'll take it with the full moon, especially since Cancer is ruled by the moon itself. And so not only will we be having the typical symptoms that you might already know that occur during the full moon, heightened emotional sensitivity, perhaps being prone to lashing out or prone to hitting a peak, something boiling over, something becoming, coming to a culmination point, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. So especially with the Cancer moon, we will be feeling our emotions. We will be feeling introverted. Cancer is very typically known as the shy one, especially with its archetype of the crab being something that can come back inside of its shell and you can't hurt it. That's very Cancer, very Cancerian. And so this full moon is really calling us to adjust to what's happening, because as you can see, where I live and a lot of the world right now, or at least in the US, has been hit with a really strong snowstorm. And so a lot of us have been forced, whether it be against our will or willingly, to stay indoors and to stay safe and to stay where we feel safe. Maybe we have been forced out of our homes, such as the people who are experiencing the fires in California right now. This is a very, very Cancerian theme, because they're being forced to find safety somewhere else and their homes are being destroyed. Really, what that looks like in the astrological world is actually Mars in Cancer, where we just had Mars move back into Cancer on Monday. And so I'm recording this today on the 9th of January, and so we had that shift just a few days ago, 4 days ago. And so what Mars in Cancer is, Mars is that fire, Cancer is the home. And my heart truly goes out to people who are experiencing that tragedy, and I won't say too much more about it because it's quite a controversial topic, but our home on the grander scale, which is our earth that we all share, has been in a state of disbalance for a long time now. And I think the way that our earth is trying to communicate with us has reached a culmination point. It has reached a point where it's not waiting any longer for us to wake up and realize what's happening. It's forcing us to make decisions that we may have wanted to always just stay in our comfort zone and to deny that things are happening, and to stay in our lifestyles that don't require any change. But now we're being forced to change. We're being forced to move. We're being forced to listen. And Cancer can be much about the quiet solitude as well. It can be about that quiet time in our safe zones, being able to tune into our intuition, because Cancer is a feminine sign. It's tuning into that mother always knows best is the term, and this inner knowing that the feminine possesses, whether you're a mother or not. The feminine possesses this knowing that can only be heard in those quiet spaces, and it can be heard as a whisper. But when Mars enters Cancer, it's not whispering. It's speaking loudly. It's very uncomfortable there. It's learning how to stay still, because Mars is the planet of action. It's learning how to deal with its emotions, because Mars is really good at taking action, maybe not so much good at allowing the emotions to take over and to take up space. So that Mars in Cancer is going to be working with us for a while, and it's also working with the Divine Masculine. As we are seeing the North Node switch from Aries to Pisces, we have seen in the past 18 months with the North Node in Aries shifting and working with the Divine Masculine, because Aries is ruled by Mars, shifting and working with the Divine Masculine and reframing what it means to be the sacred warrior, reframing what it means to be the pioneer and to be a leader, because Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. So we're moving from the first sign of the zodiac to the last sign of the zodiac now, because the nodes move backwards through the signs. And I won't get too technical on you today, but with us moving back into Pisces, especially at that 29-degree point, we are asked to pause, and we are asked to truly ask ourselves and reflect on how far we've come, and to look over our shoulder and to say, I did all that I could do with what I had, and accept that and forgive ourselves, and to have compassion for ourselves, and to understand on a spiritual level that whatever happened for a reason, because there was a karmic lesson that needed to be learned and a karmic lesson that needed to be fulfilled. And so there might be a lot of men, or whatever you identify as, anyone who's working with masculine energy or more action-oriented energy, looking back and seeing and asking ourselves, okay, did I really do all that I could do? And how can I move forward from here in a new, better way? In a new spiritual way, in a new creative way, in a new compassionate way, in a new forgiving way that doesn't cause me to go straight to battle, to cause me to put down the sword of anger and resentment and all these things that can be the shadow aspect of Aries. So with this 111 portal and with the shift moving into Pisces, we are truly being asked to get creative, to zoom out as if we imagine our lives being flashed before our eyes, that moment right before death, where we can review everything and we can truly see it from a different perspective, because there's no going back. Pisces and Cancer both have a lot to do with looking back and nostalgia and romanticizing the past and forgiving the past, because both of these signs are associated with nurturing energy. Water energy is always associated with emotions, so feeling deeply, feeling like we've been our own mother, like we've stepped into that nurturing, mothering role for ourselves. That's Cancer. And being our own guru, which is the Pisces archetype. So there's a lot of similarities there. It's really wonderful that we only have 2 days in between the nodal shift and the full moon. The full moon is actually occurring on the 13th of January, and that's happening 5:27 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And like I said, at 23 degrees Cancer, so check out your chart and see if you have anything at 23 degrees. If you like, I can always help you to understand if there's any aspects being made. Or of course, if you have 23 degrees of Cancer or Capricorn, knowing that the sun and the moon will be right there on those points. So what we have with Cancer and Capricorn is a deep polarity. Just like all the signs on axis, when they are across from each other, they have a deep polarity occurring. And the polarity between Cancer and Capricorn is the safety, emotional safety, and the physical safety. What we have is Cancer being ruled by the moon, which of course is the closest celestial body to Earth. And we have Saturn, which in the Hellenistic period, before we discovered these more outer planets, essentially in ancient astrology, Saturn was the most distant planet that we were aware of. So we have closeness with the moon and distance with Saturn. We have warmth and nurturing with the moon and the mother archetype, and we have distance, coldness, and sometimes deep, harsh lessons with Saturn. So whatever we are going through, circling back to this point that I made at the beginning of getting out of our comfort zone, because Cancer wants to stay comfortable. Cancer doesn't want to do anything that's going to put themselves at risk and put their safety at risk. Saturn is asking us to, with Capricorn, in the sun in Capricorn being ruled by Saturn, Saturn is asking us to really understand the harsh lessons that we've been through, and to be willing and brave enough to take on that voyage to the top of the mountain, because Capricorn is that mountain goat that travels to the top of the mountain and then back again to the depths of the ocean. It's the sea goat. And it takes guts, it takes strength, it takes tenacity, it takes loyalty, it takes devotion to take on such a journey that will last a long time and that will be guaranteed to have harsh trials and tribulations along the way, but for the better, but for our own growth, but for the growth and acquiring of our skills and the sharpening of our skills. I said in my last video for the new moon in Capricorn, Saturn is like that mean, harsh coach that you had in high school that made you run those bleachers, that had you take extra practices before the big race, but at the end of the day you guys won the race, so you had Saturn to thank for that at the end of the day, because you wouldn't have maybe gotten there without those extra practices, without that extra edge that was taken. So Saturn gets a bad rap, but there is so much benefit to its archetype. Saturn is the power to say no and to set boundaries for ourselves. And without Saturn, we don't have emotional safety. If we don't have boundaries, we do not have true safety. Pisces is going to be working with us in an interesting way, and it could be working with us in a way where it's dissolving those boundaries. That's the purpose of Pisces and Neptune. It dissolves those boundaries and it allows us to forgive, right? But we have to find the balance, just like everything. Just like every single video that I make, we are looking for the balance, and we're looking to work with the healed aspects of the archetype. And if we are seeing the unhealed aspects, we want to bring those into balance as well. So if we're having too many boundaries, if we're cutting ourselves off from the world, we're becoming super cold and distant in the way that we might even become robotic, especially with all the Pisces energy, because Pisces rules screens and illusions. So maybe during this snow time, or maybe, during these intense times that we're living in, we're spending too much time binge watching our shows, playing our video games, staring at our phones, maybe coming to terms with our addiction to the screens, because Pisces also rules addictions and escapism, using the screens to escape. And so we're not even just going to have the nodes moving into Pisces, but we have 4 other planets in Pisces right now as well. We just had Venus move into Pisces a little bit ago. We have Saturn in Pisces, so really having maybe some trouble with boundaries there. And we have, of course, Neptune in Pisces, which is the ruler of Pisces in modern astrology. And we also have, of course, the North Node in Pisces. So that's 4 altogether. Then we have the Moon in Cancer. We have Mars in Cancer, which is retrograde. Not just is Mars already uncomfortable in Cancer, but it's retrograde, which is more uncomfortable because Mars wants to go, 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 wants to take action. Retrograde says, slow down. Now is not the time to take action. Every retrograde says that. And then those are our water signs that we have, and that is 6 total. If you count the nodes as it's not a planet, but it is a point on the moon. And that's a lot of water for one given chart. That is, I get to use my favorite word in astrology, which is stellium. That is a stellium if you have 4 or more planets in one element or one sign. you have yourself a stellium. And that just means that the energy is very strong there. We're being asked to really understand our emotions and to pay attention to our emotions, because they're going to be loud and they're going to not take no for an answer, especially with what we've seen with Mars and Cancer. And we're being asked to not only just listen to our emotions, but to figure out how to work with them in a healthy way and not let them override us in becoming overly emotional and reactive. We want to, with the Capricorn energy, take it slow, and we might need to even put those emotions to the side for the sake of making long-term decisions. It might feel like if you are having to make any decisions about saying no to something, and you might feel as if you are a mother saying no to your child, that's hard. Because the mother inherently normally would want to overly give to the child, self-sacrifice even, which is a very Piscean archetype quality as well. So we don't want to become the martyr. We don't want to become too emotional. We don't want to become the overbearing mother where we never cut the cord and we don't have any separation, we don't have any boundaries. We want to become a healthy mother to ourselves and to others, because I think it's pretty safe to say that we all want to be people that are nice and nurturing and kind and not cold and distant and shut down emotionally. You know, if you want the other way around, to each his own. But yeah, I think generally for the next 18 months, especially with the North Node in Pisces, we are going to soften, and we are going to be working around softening into forgiveness, into compassion, and into being able to transmute whatever it is that we've been so hurt by into a creative venture, into something that we can use that as a spiritual tool, and we can use that as looking back and saying, wow, I really lived through this situation and did the best that I could, and now I get to make another decision from here. Now I get to start again. Now I get to see myself at the end of the wheel here, and I get to start again, knowing that the next time we see the nodes shift, it will be back in Aquarius in the North Node. And that's gonna be really interesting. I'm not even gonna pretend to go there right now because we're already going all over the place with all these transits. But I think it's really safe to say that once the North Node in Aquarius happens, especially paired with the Pluto in Aquarius, we will definitely be seeing more technological advances. But anyways, with the 333 portal, the 111 portal, sorry, that equals 3, that's that creativity, that's that Cancer energy, that's that because Cancer's the mother, it rules the belly and the womb. It is a metaphor for giving birth. It is a metaphor for being the mother of something, you know, whether that's your creative project or an actual child. And it's funny enough that we're seeing this Cancer full moon coinciding just about, we've got a little bit more time until Imbolc, which is the witch's new year. Imbolc means in the belly, and that is occurring on February 2nd. So we see all this together, and it's also really interesting that we have the snow occurring, especially with Capricorn, because it rules that coldness and it rules the harsh conditions that we might find ourselves in. So, a few more things about Pisces is when we look back on the past, there's a tendency to romanticize the past. There's a tendency to tap into those things that kept us happy when we were in the past. There could be a tendency to look back and maybe forget all the bad things that happened to us, all the trials and tribulations that we went through. And it could be that there's this feeling when we tap into certain memories, that it's this unnameable feeling. It's a twinge of going back to that time, but also simultaneously feeling that we can never go back to that time. And that can be really sad, and that can be a little bit of a harsh wake-up call as well, because it can be so easy, and that can be another form of escapism, to look back at the past, to live in the nostalgia, but to neglect being in the present moment and to avoid what's happening for you in the present moment. Pisces wants us to become our own spiritual leader. It wants us to become our own spiritual authority, and it wants us to really, truly cultivate a relationship with spirit, or whatever you want to call it, God, whatever. I think with the Aries North Node that we had for the last 18 months, we were really asked to get real with ourselves. We were asked to get to know ourselves on a deeper level and to understand our wants and desires, because Mars is about wants and desires. Mars, the ruler of Aries. And we were asked to perhaps be alone as well, and really feel what it feels like to be alone, to understand what the difference between being lonely and being in solitude means. And with Pisces, whatever we cultivated in that alone time and whatever we gathered information-wise about ourselves, we now are being asked to put that into a spiritual practice, and we're being asked to not only understand that we are never alone, truly, we are always with spirit, and we are always guided, and we are always protected. So this fear that Cancer can sometimes have about staying safe, and that fear that can stop us from taking risks, it can stop us from leaving our comfort zones, it truly can be stifling. Because if we don't have that Pisces aspect where we know we're protected, we know that we are guided, and that we know that just because we're taking steps into the unknown, there's no stairs there. As soon as we take those steps will appear. And that requires a lot of trust. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we'll be working with the next 18 months, is learning to truly trust spirit, learning to truly trust our own inner knowing, our intuition, that watery, feminine inner knowing, that we can step out into the unknown. We can step out into that mystical and unknown space, which is Pisces as well. Pisces is the liminal spaces and psychedelic spaces, and the things that a lot of people, rightfully so, have a lot of fear around entering those spaces. But if we don't ever explore those spaces, we really won't know. We really will never know what they're like. We only can speculate, and we can only look down from our ivory tower and say, well, that would be cool to learn about, but I'm just gonna stay here. And we don't want to do that, because the biggest thing with Pisces is understanding our own mortality as well. Understanding that every single day Our life is passing by, and we only get to live every day according to how we choose to live. And are we going to make choices based on fear, or are we going to make choices based on trusting Spirit? Maybe we're making choices around becoming that mother archetype to someone who doesn't deserve it. Maybe we're feeling so attached to these old people or old ways that we feel like if we say no, then we're the mother that rejects their child, and that can be heartbreaking. And at the end of the day, we have to do what's best for our emotional safety. We have to do what's best for our physical safety, and those choices can be really hard. Those choices can break our hearts. But I think, just like that most cliche spiritual saying that everybody has most likely heard before, the places where you crack your heart open is the places where the light comes in. And that is true. Is true, very true, as cliche as it is. So maybe if we allow our hearts to break open a little bit and to enter that unknown space, we can learn that Spirit works in mysterious ways. And when we take a risk, we can meet Spirit there in those spaces, and we can say, wow, and realize I was always taken care of. I was always protected. And so I don't have my cards, I don't have my runes. It's snowy. But I wanted to make sure and get this video out before the nodal shift on Saturday. Today's Thursday, so I did it. I got myself out of my warm house. I am a Cancer rising, so this full moon is really special to me. And yeah, I just want to thank you all so much for being here. I want to ask for you to please subscribe and like this video. It really helps me to grow my channel. Hoping that the technical difficulties worked out better this time. My apologies for the last video and how it was a little quiet at the beginning. And I will see you again in 2 weeks for the next new moon. Thank you all so much. Namaste.